Hello. I want to begin today with a story. When I was growing up in Nova Scotia, we had a lot of love in our household, but we had very little else. Food, heat, hot water were often scarce. When I was 14, my brother, my sister, and I decided to pool the money that our grandmother gave us, $20 each, to put it together and get our mother a bracelet. It was the prettiest thing that we had ever seen, according to us at the time. It had little leaves woven together and what we thought were diamonds, but were definitely plastic. And we were so excited to give it to her on Christmas morning. But when she opened it, she started crying and left the room. We were absolutely mortified. But a few minutes later, she came back. And my mom had put on makeup, done her hair, and put on her best clothes. And she sat us down and told us that this little piece of jewelry had put her back on her own radar. Now, I'm telling you this story today because that story was reminded and came up when I was just fresh in Calgary from Nova Scotia. And that story gave birth to our jewelry drive. Our jewelry drive in the first Christmas was able to give Christmas gifts to women in Alberta in shelters, 436 of them. And it has now grown to 16,000 across Canada, all due to thousands of people doing what they could and igniting a little spark for a little bit of change that created a massive impact. Before we go any further, I would love to thank our sponsors, Homefront, United Way Calgary, Discovery House, Mar Media, the Aesthetics Institute, and A Dose of Happiness. Thank you all so much. We are honored to have Homefront's Maggie McKillop with us today to do the land acknowledgement. Maggie?
Thank you, Jordan. Homefront is super excited to be part of this amazing event, and we are more than honored to read the land acknowledgement. In the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge that we live, work, and play on the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, Siksika, Kainai, Piikani, the Tsuut'ina, the Stoney Nakoda Nations, the Métis Nation, Region 3, and all the people who make their homes in the Treaty 7 region of Southern Alberta. It is our desire that we all choose to move forward in the spirit of peace and harmony for and with all people this land has brought together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maggie. The story that I started with was the spark that brought us all here today. Today, approximately every 5 days, a woman is murdered in Canada. Domestic abuse is now the leading cause of death for women globally. And with these numbers, it is personal, and it's personal for all of us. Our goal today is to share and equip each other with the strength needed to speak up and ignite the spirit of change in each of us so that we can all magnify that spirit in our lives and in our communities. The second part of this event will be a Q&A. We promise to do our best to answer as many questions as we possibly can during this time. But if in the event we don't get to your question today, we are personally committed to answering all of them and listing them anonymously on our website within a week. You will be notified. Please see the chat box beneath, and as questions come into your head, we encourage you to write them in there, and we will get to them as soon as possible. By no means are our panelists, myself, nor Gems for Gems, claiming to be experts in this field. We are survivors, we are friends, we are family, and we are you. We are here to empower you in the knowledge that your voice, your experiences, and what you do with them matter. It can change the world. Over the past 6 years, Gems for Gems has been incredibly fortunate to have grown an amazing group of men and women, all committed to the livable commitment of being our motto, which is to be the change in our communities. These people have led by example, and we have two such incredible ambassadors with us today. Olivia Stuck and Michelle Morgan are both accomplished actresses in their own rights, but both women are also personally activated. They are here to share, discuss, and ignite the spark to create change within. I'd love to introduce both of them and have them both come on the screen now.
Hi.
So, hi, Michelle.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, Olivia. So we're going to begin today's discussion.
Hello.
We're going to begin today's discussion with Michelle. So Michelle, you can take it away.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jordan. Hello, Olivia and Maggie.
Hello.
Hello. And Maggie, thank you so much for that land acknowledgement. My name is Michelle Morgan, and I am here in Calgary currently. I am Chilean Canadian, and I'm just so happy to be here speaking with all of you. I wanted to start by bringing up the 7 generations principle. Some of you may have heard of it, some of you may have not. It is the Iroquois philosophy that the decisions we make today should result in a sustainable world 7 generations into the future. So as an exercise, let's think about what that world might be like, that world that we can create with our decisions. And for the sake of this time, let's focus less on the physical aspects of the environment and more on human interactions and health. So maybe just take a deep breath in and out your nose. And imagine, what does that sustainable world look like? How do people treat each other in this future that we create together? What are the values of the society and what makes it healthy and thriving? For me, I want to live in a world where we are encouraged to feel empathy, a world where we act on this empathy by protecting our most vulnerable, and where we value kindness, equity, ingenuity, and integrity. I want to live in a world where people can feel safe and loved in their homes so that they can develop and grow into the best possible versions of themselves. I want every kid to have a good start, a fair shot. That's the kind of sustainable world I want to live in. And that's why, for me, this work is crucial. Now, before we dive into the types of actions we can take, I'll just give you a little background on me. I'm an actor, as Jordan said. I'm a director, a writer, a parent, and lately a chip connoisseur, like potato chips. And I think I can thank lockdown for that. I never used to eat chips, but now I love them. What I am not, though, is a frontline worker in a shelter or a policymaker or a researcher. So when Jordan asked me to speak today, my first instinct was, why me? And then I thought about it. And I realized Jordan is a smart cookie and she has a reason for the things she does. And what I came to after thinking about it is that I should be allowed to speak today. And I'm happy to speak today because in order to make real change in our society, we can't just leave it up to the professionals to take care of it for us. We have to take their lead, but we can't just say they'll handle it and shrug our shoulders. It takes everyday concerned citizens. It takes you and me to make real, lasting change in our community. So that's my theory on why I'm here. And I do have a platform now to advocate for domestic abuse survivors and for organizations that support them, but I didn't start out that way. My own journey into this work started before social media existed, almost 20 years ago. I don't want to date myself too much. I had just completed my degree at University of Toronto. And I was starting the grind of auditioning. I did a theater degree. I was waitressing, staying out too late with my friends. I was pursuing my passion, but I felt a little bit aimless. And so I started looking for something grounding, a purpose to shape my life. And after 4 years of being in a stuffy university, I just missed being around kids. So I discovered a local shelter in Toronto called Interval House. It was a really beautiful shelter where mothers and their children lived for months at a time. and I started doing drama classes for the kids at the shelter. It was bonkers. Those kids were so full of energy and ideas, and they were funny, and they were hilarious improvisers, and they were all ages, and just trying to control them was huge effort. I finished that always exhausted and exhilarated, and with a huge respect for teachers. After volunteering there for a few years, I moved to Vancouver, and I had a very different experience where I volunteered with the Vancouver Rape Relief Shelter, which was an emergency shelter. So that was a completely different experience where I saw a different side of this work, and it was very eye-opening. I moved to Calgary to work on Heartland, came back to Calgary where I was born, and I volunteered at the Brenda Stratford Society, which is a shelter here. And I've also been very lucky to see the ins and outs a little bit of what Homefront does, and now Gems for Gems. So what strikes me after all these years and seeing all these different organizations across Canada is that we're all the same, and we're all dealing with the same issue of domestic abuse. And importantly, I've realized that these organizations are making a huge difference in people's lives. They may not be able to wave their magic wand and make domestic abuse go away. And in fact, as many of us know, there are numbers that say it's increasing now during this time, but the work that they do is invaluable and deserves our support. So what can we do to help? I think a really easy one is we can change the conversation around domestic abuse in the way we talk about it. Let's use our voices to empower people. Everyone has a right to live in a safe and violence-free life. And if they're experiencing abuse, there's no shame and no self-blaming. There is only support. The discussion around domestic abuse needs to be just as common as discussing sexual harassment in the workplace, traffic safety, or reproductive rights. Let's start talking about this with our friends and our family and our coworkers in a practical way. Because domestic abuse permeates our entire society, regardless of income, background, location. It can happen to anyone. And you don't have to be a Debbie Downer about it. You can take pride in it, in efforts being made to support victims. The amazing efforts of organizations like Homefront Calgary, the United Way, Discovery House, the Brenda Stratford Society. You can talk about Gems for Gems offering scholarships to help women carve out a new path in life. Or tell the stories of women like our scholarship recipients. Celebrate their courage. Because you will inspire two people to change the conversation. And they will inspire two people. And one day when the right person hears that message, it will change their life. They may feel more comfortable coming forward for help without stigma. Or maybe a child who grows up hearing this message could avoid creating or staying in an abusive relationship in the future. What else can we do? We can know the local help numbers and point them out to people who might need them. Jordan placed them in a slide earlier. We can also share those at any time. We can follow organizations and local shelters on social media and share their messages, particularly when it comes to their fundraising drives. If it's possible, we can make donations or volunteer our time. There are endless possibilities for volunteering. And we can support organizations like Gems for Gems. I got to see change in action recently at a weekend retreat for 3 survivors of domestic abuse who were awarded GEMS scholarships. I led a workshop called Find Your Voice, and we practiced speaking from integrity. We practiced being heard, and it was beautiful and very moving for everyone. The scholarship recipients have chosen to study aesthetics, and they are carving out a new path for themselves. I have witnessed women go back to their offenders, and often the person feels they have no other choice. So I love the idea behind the GEMS scholarship because it helps give these women a better option. It gives them a shot at rebuilding their beautiful self-worth and their confidence, and financially the prospect of standing on their own 2 feet. I want to end by saying that I believe that we are all living the 7 generations philosophy right now, just by being here in front of our computers and engaging in this essential conversation about domestic abuse. A conversation about how we can all be the change. The decision to be here today and to talk about it openly is a step towards our communal healing. Thank you.
Michelle, I just absolutely loved that. One of the points that I discovered when I researched the 7-generation principle was that whole concept of that you're planting a seed today, which I thought was spectacular because so many times people see their small actions as not significant enough and not large enough to make a difference, and they end up doing nothing instead of doing something. And this 7-generation principle, I think, is a beautiful way of acknowledging what the seed can grow into.
Absolutely. Think how much you have been altered and changed in your life by an interaction with one person, by their attitude towards something, by their energy. You can really shift and be a change in someone's life just through, being, just through speaking, just through being around them. So I think that idea of planting a seed is really pertinent here. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, no, of course. Olivia, do you have anything to add to Michelle's discussion?
I just want to say that I definitely got a lot out of that, and I'm very grateful to hear what she had to say. It was very beautiful and amazing.
One of the things that you brought up, Michelle, too, regarding children as well, and leading by example. Sadly, we're in a time right now where a lot of our youth, because we're only now starting to talk about things, it's still taboo for a lot of them. And now, what is youth? I mean, youth is anything up to 35, I think. So for another few months, I qualify. but what I'm really struck by is that because so much of their life, this topic has been taboo, many of the people who are now in the adult world have experienced domestic abuse of several different kinds and have not felt comfortable talking about it or even known exactly what to do. And I mean, with that, Olivia, I think this would be a great caveat into what you wanted to discuss today.
Wonderful. Yes, definitely. Hi, guys. I'm so happy to be here with you. There are a couple topics that I'd like to touch on today. So I'll go through them one by one. The first topic is understanding your worth. And you have to be willing to allow yourself to see your self-worth. Naturally, it seems that sometimes we see ourselves in the worst light instead of the best. And when we enter a relationship with that low self-esteem, we can tend to base that relationship on looking for somebody to complete us. And what I'd like to say today is that you are complete fully on your own. And that's something that before going into any friendship or any relationship, it's important to have that base of self-respect and self-worth. You were born with everything that you've ever needed to reach your potential, and you don't need another person to have that understanding about yourself. The second topic I'd like to chat about is gaslighting. Gaslighting is unfortunately very common, and the definition of gaslighting is to manipulate somebody by psychological means into questioning their own sanity. What people don't talk about enough is the unfortunate pitfalls of gaslighting. Some of those include memory loss, and you start to question yourself and repeating cycles because even though a situation is toxic, it's familiar. And in a place where we're very confused, we tend to gravitate to the known. So even though a situation may not be healthy for us, because we are comfortable there, we tend to go back. But it's finding that strength and self-worth to realize that you know more, that you deserve more. And self-love starts with self-respect. For me, it's about taking your power back and bit by bit understanding that each moment is hugely significant. No progress that you may make is meaningless or too small to celebrate. And understanding that loving yourself means the good and the bad, the strengths and the weaknesses, the same that you would love another person with the good and the bad in them. And this healing, getting to this point, it's not an overnight thing. It's about being kind to yourself and having patience and sit with the pain that you feel. Oftentimes we have a certain perception of healing, what we think it's going to look like. And what can make it very difficult is when we realize that healing is a very individual process. It's best to pay attention to what you're feeling and grow with it and empower yourself throughout time. And understand that healing doesn't mean not looking back. Naturally, as human beings, we do look back, and it's okay to look back in the past and give a nod as long as you continue to move forward and find that self-worth. Acknowledge the presence and the purpose of the pain that you're feeling and continue to move forward. I want to say that there are millions of people in this world who will not just like you, but love you, and they will treat you kindly and with the respect that you deserve once you have that understanding of what you are worth. My fourth point is to envision who you would like to be, and then to align everything with that choice. It's loving yourself enough to know that you deserve to be that person, and no matter what you've been through, no matter what you've experienced, it is never too late to start again and to start loving yourself and go through that process. Personally, I feel that when we experience great pain and when we allow ourselves to heal, it then gives us a greater amount of empathy and compassion for other people who are experiencing things. For me personally, that's when I met Jordan and I started working with gems. I never could have imagined it having the impact on my life and it meaning so much to me. But I would say that's something that seed was planted, and you have to choose to water it so it can grow into something beautiful. And one of my thoughts on that is, I wonder if the pain that we experience, if we hadn't gone through that, would we still be able to have the amount of compassion and empathy? That's, that's what I'd like to say today. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Olivia. I think that that's an amazing point that you just brought up at the very end. If we didn't go through everything we have, would we have the same capacity for empathy? Would we have the same understanding that there's so much more than what we even know? I know a lot of times people really judge, back to Michelle's point, really judge those who return to abusers. And it's very easy to lose patience and very easy to be frustrated when you don't understand it. But I think that when you have gone through something, you learn that you don't need to understand to have empathy. You don't need to be in their shoes to be able to have an understanding that it's difficult and that you need to do what you can to be there for them. Michelle, do you have anything to add to Olivia's?
Thank you for sharing that, Olivia. And same, what you said at the end about going through pain, how that can lead to compassion and empathy. I don't know about you, but I definitely feel like I have witnessed that in my work in the shelter system. Oh, is she gone? Did she go? Is Olivia still there?
We'll figure that out. Michelle, you keep going.
Sure. I just wanted to say that I definitely have been around women who have worked through trauma and have come out the other side incredible, compassionate women who are able to, in turn, like turn around and help others who are going through it. So that's been really inspiring. And she also spoke about just her personal experience with pain and with like working through it instead of avoiding it, which I found really inspiring as well, because I think right in this day and age, we're so compelled to pick up our phone or avoid feeling things, right? Or avoid dealing with things. And so the idea of working through our trauma or our triggers, our pain is, I think, just like exactly what I know I need to be doing. Yeah, I thought that was really beautiful. Thank you for that, Olivia.
And she's back.
Olivia, are you there? Olivia?
Oh, you're on mute still.
Hi, I was kicked off.
Oh no, Olivia, I
um,
want to ask you. I just mentioned that, like, what I said a few things, but I wanted to ask you. You spoke really eloquently about moving through and dealing with pain, and you definitely don't have to get into it. But it sounds like you were speaking from personal experience. Is that right?
Yes, yes, very much so. I personally, I've been somebody who has been dealing with depression since I was 14,
Mhm.
and in having that ongoing experience, it's something that I'm very candid about because I think, of course, what back to what you mentioned, Michelle, we things can be very taboo when we're younger to talk about, and my experience is that when we have courage and are able to open up about what we're experiencing, it makes it more easier for other people to in turn share their feelings, and we find healing there.
That's really inspiring. And, you also talked about people who move through their trauma and their pain, who are in turn able to be more compassionate and have more empathy for others. And I definitely see that in the world all around me. I wonder, like, because you're younger than me, how do we help? Because I know, like, in my parents' generation and their parents' generation, people didn't talk about domestic abuse. They didn't talk about that, was like thought of as a shameful family secret. Or if there were things
Yeah,
that had happened in the family, it was not something that was discussed openly. I know in my family, we discovered something that had been happening in my grandparents' generation, and it would had been like a family secret that no one could talk about. And I really feel like we need to evolve beyond that, and stop feeling like we need to shut the door and hide our trauma and hide our pain. Not that we necessarily need to go on Instagram and announce it to the world unless we want to, but
sure.
I didn't feel like we need to close the door and hide, right?
Very much so. I completely agree with everything that you're saying here. And I think sometimes we're, as somebody who is more open about things like that, it takes a certain conversation or a couple conversations. I'm sure you know what I mean,
Mhm.
just to um, make somebody feel comfortable. But I would say it's very important. It's very crucial in order to have a more open dialogue. And
I almost
um,
wonder if, like, because I see a lot of young people on Instagram and TikTok sharing their, stories of depression or eating disorders. I almost wonder if it's easier to share, to your computer or to your phone rather than with your peers.
yes, I think so in a way. I think that very much depends on the personality though. Because for me, it would be incredibly difficult
Mhm.
because I'm that person who likes to have that face-to-face contact.
Right.
And that's the way that I've been able to have those conversations with my family and getting to actually choose to have those sit-down conversations and open up to them and give them the space to feel comfortable opening up and knowing that it takes time. But I think we do live, that's the beautiful thing about today. Obviously, it has its pros and cons, but people are feeling more comfortable with sharing,
Mhm.
which that takes a lot of courage. And I really honor that about today and about what people are doing. But yeah, I'd say it's an individual process. And yeah.
Olivia, I know in one of the conversations that you and I had leading up to this event, we were talking about how so many people, and you briefly touched on this, how so many people look at the public side of healing. So, what celebrities do to heal, and they very much feel that those are the options available to them. And I know you said something fantastic, which was, yes, but Jordan, it's not a one size fits all situation. And I completely agree with you on that. And I think that so many people, and to the there's the good side of things is that the systems are in place to be able to put people through counseling and very structured help with structured itineraries for the each session and everything. But that won't work for everyone. And I thought that you bringing up the one size fits all, it does not fit all, was a beautiful point because some people heal with support like that, and other people heal in nature. Other people heal with horses, Michelle. And, you know, like there's so many different forms of healing. And I know, Olivia, you've had a few different types of healing that you've experienced. I wonder if you can touch on that a little bit.
Definitely. I would say I think it's very important to understand that healing is it's not a one size fits all situation, and choosing to allow yourself to find your type of healing, what feels best for you, whether it's working with a charity. For me that's working with gems, and I've found a home there. I've met people that have made me feel understood, and seeing that I have a home, that in turn was extremely healing for me, because my feeling is that humans want to be understood no matter what we've experienced or, you know, gone through. We want to be understood. We want our pain to be heard. And going through that process, finding healing, is, you can see from, you look at the media or you watch videos of people that are talking about what worked for them. It doesn't mean that that will necessarily work for you. What has worked for me very well is to learn to sit in the silence and sit with my body, whether that's through meditation or it's going on hikes, getting active and having a greater perspective of the things around me rather than staying in a space that doesn't feel good. Listening to my body is part of self-love for me. And hey, I'm not feeling good here. Okay, I need to step out. There's nothing wrong with that. And allowing yourself, like I said before, allowing yourself to find what works for you is a part of having self-love.
It's beautiful. Thank you for that. Michelle, do you have anything else to add to that? The questions are flying in here, so whenever you're ready, we can start. But Michelle, if you'd like to say something else,
I think that actually, Olivia, it's really inspiring that, you know, you're so young and you're already, you know, you're speaking with like a wisdom beyond your years, because I think that that's something that I'm just learning now. I'm like getting towards the end of my 30s, and just the idea that you can sit with your body and with your feelings and honor what you're feeling and what you're going through. And it's beautiful work, but it's hard, right?
Very much so. And thank you so much. Yeah.
I'm happy to start with any questions that have come in.
Okay, great. Before we continue, I just want to say I'm receiving questions on my cell phone, which is why I'm looking down, because we have ambassadors in the Q&A section. So please write in the Q&A section, not in the chat box, so just in the Q&A section. And I am being texted all your questions, which there's also a lot of statements with how lovely both of you two are and how genuine, smart, and how valuable what you've said is. So thank you both very much. Okay, we can start. Where is the line with domestic abuse when it comes to children? What is okay for discipline?
Well, I'm a parent.
Either of you want to take that one, or I can, whatever you like.
Yeah, go ahead, Jordan. If you have an answer, go ahead.
Okay, sure. So obviously this is an interesting question in the sense that the line can be very gray for a lot of different people. There's a lot of different thoughts on this spectrum. Obviously, any sort of physical abuse is not something we would stand by at all. But as far as verbal abuse, I think this is a really valuable question, because the line is murky. And what can be said and how you say it is so very important. To me, my advice to you is, if you think that someone you know, or if you feel like you might be walking that line, thank you, first of all, for recognizing that. And secondly, go ask someone. Call one of your local helplines and ask. No judgment, will be there for you. People want to help you. And we all need to work together to be the best parents and the best community members that we can be. So if this is something you've identified in yourself or someone else, please seek help, advice, and thank you very much for being open and honest to ask that.
And I'd like to chime in.
Mm-hmm.
We should share the phone number that people should call if they think that they're witnessing child abuse, or if they want to report child abuse? Can we make sure that we share that in the chat?
Definitely. Oh, in the chat for sure. We'll also be sending out the slideshow too with all of that as well, and it in the post email as well, the post event email as well. So.
And I did want to say, you know, being a parent is extremely stressful, especially right now when people are at home all the time with their kids. And for me, it's actually a good bellwether of how I'm doing. If I notice myself snapping at my kids, if I notice myself taking out frustration on my kids, you know, like shouting more. And so it's great as parents if we can be attuned to that. And that should be part of our responsibility. Like, wait a minute, am I taking out my own issues on my kid? Because they don't deserve that. And, you know, but of course, if we're talking about physical abuse, there's just zero tolerance, and it should not be permitted, and it should be dealt with professionally with by calling a children's helpline or getting the police involved if that's necessary.
Absolutely. So this one is actually for Michelle. This question is, how did you manage to get past your experience with abuse to succeed in your career?
Thank you for asking. I actually, because I work in this sphere, many people assume that my background, that I did experience personally domestic abuse. That's not the case. I was very lucky to be raised in, you know, a loving, gentle home. And I found I gravitated it more because I just couldn't believe that it could be any other way. And I thought that that wasn't right, that especially for children, which was my initial draw to it, the idea that they could live in a home where they didn't feel supported and safe. I just thought, like, this can't be right. This can't be Canada. This can't be the modern world where a child can live in a home like that. So that's what drew me to it. But I did subsequently discover that there was trauma in my father and his parents' generation that, you know, was happening around me as a child that I wasn't aware of. And it actually was very helpful to me that I had spent so much time speaking with professionals in this field. I felt like I was prepared for finding out things later and trying to help some of my family members deal with some of their trauma.
That's awesome. Olivia, did you have something to say to that?
I think it's
light go up.
Oh, no. I just clicked unmute and mute, but
okay.
Yeah.
Olivia, I have one for you. Someone is asking, how did you heal past your abuse? They heard you talk about nature and everything, but they wondered if you were around abusers. How did you heal past that? I think from the way this is worded, I feel as though the question is based around the industry, as in, is your abuse in the industry? Did you have to see someone in the industry work with the person in the industry, that type of thing?
Well, personally, my experiences are a mixture of both, of my personal life and the industry. I would say I walk a very fine line with these things, but I think the most important thing that how I grew from that was deciding that what my boundaries are and what is okay and what isn't okay, and being ruthless about my happiness and choosing to speak up for myself when I did experience things. I think, unfortunately, sometimes it can be in the industry. You can be working with a bunch of different people and things can happen behind the scenes, but what's really important is to step away and to speak to whoever you need to speak to, and to reevaluate what the situation is and move forward from there.
That's great. For Michelle, have you seen abuse in your industry? And if so, how were you the change in your industry?
So I would say that the film industry has changed drastically since the Me Too movement started. Um, just in the past like 8 years, there has been a huge change in the treatment of women. And I would say particularly in the crew, like people who work behind the scenes, there's always been this mentality of it's a boys' club and the women who work behind the scenes have to step up and be tough. And also there's sort of this insider club mentality where you don't complain to the boss about a coworker. And so I had female crew member friends who would tell me about things because I don't think that kind of thing would happen in front of the cast necessarily. But I do know people who would tell me about terrible things that they went through, being bullied, sexist comments to them that were like horrendous. And I don't think that would happen today. I feel like today there's a lot more awareness around that. What was the original question again? It was, have I witnessed it?
How did you create change in that space?
I think it is about your personality and your attitude about it. And sometimes it's about letting people know that their jokes and their comments are not okay, right? Because it doesn't necessarily begin with something, a big, bold action. It begins with like little jokes and little comments. And when people make sexist jokes or aggressive jokes or racist jokes, just not laughing and maybe saying like, actually, that's not appropriate. So that, I mean, just setting the tone for what is and what is not acceptable in any workplace, I think is everyone's job. Although it's more difficult for, like, it depends, which is why it depends. If you're a boss, it's even, if you're a manager, it's definitely your job. But if you're new in a company and you walk in and you're going to tell people, oh, that's not appropriate, that's a lot harder, right? So there has to be awareness around who's in charge and who's setting the tone.
I think that's a wonderful, wonderful point to make too, because a lot of people feel that their job might be in jeopardy if they speak up. Yeah, so I would add to that maybe too, that if you are new into a job and obviously you perhaps didn't see that coming, to be willing to get up and just move out of that space if that conversation is being held. And if you do it frequently enough, people will understand that that's not something that's comfortable for you to be around. And honestly, even just leading with that type of physical action, you will find often that things stop happening as much around you, or they'll confront you about it. And then at that point, you can say that I'm just not comfortable with this line of conversation.
Well, and there are resources for people to reach out without having to do it in front of their coworkers.
Definitely. Yeah. So we're having some heavier questions come in too. So the first one that I'm getting here is he only hits me when he's drinking. I feel like he still loves me. What would you suggest? I don't know who wants. Olivia?
Yes. What I have to say about that is it is never okay under any circumstances to be hit by a partner. If your partner is willing to get to that point when they are around you, I think that says quite a bit. And I believe that we can find people who love us and who, because that's a boundary, that's crossing a boundary, allowing yourself to get to that point where you are getting physical with people around you. That says a lot about the person. And I encourage you to seek people who make you feel comfortable and who, if they know that if they drink quite a bit, they get aggressive, they don't get to that point. It's having boundaries and knowing what is comfortable and what isn't, so we can keep the space fun and happy and safe at all times.
I think this question, this actually feeds off of another question that's come in too, which is.
Can I just quickly chime in that
Sure.
Wherever you live, if they're in Calgary, we should definitely share that slide again, Jordan, with resources, because I see some in the Q&A, people are asking for resources. So maybe we could share that slide again. You could just Google on a private window, if you're worried about your security, women's helpline, domestic abuse helpline, helpline general. there are professionals. If you have any doubts about your safety, your mental health, your situation, you should speak to a professional about it. And you can do it anonymously. There are even chats online. Like I know in Alberta, this is an available feature on a private window. There's a 24-hour chat window if you're worried about someone hearing you. So there are resources, and I think if there is any doubt in your mind, reach out and speak to a professional and just start a conversation.
Yeah, that's great advice, Michelle. And you know, certainly on our slides and in all of our publicizing of this event, we've been very consistent with, if you are, or anyone you know, in any sort of danger, reach out, call 911. We have, as Michelle referenced, made a compilation of resources available to you. We'll be putting that slide up right away at the end of this event, as well as sharing these slides with everyone in attendance. So it will all be readily available within minutes of this event ending. This question does kind of lead into the other side of the equation, which is another question: how do I stop myself when I feel physically angry? And there is the other side of this equation, is that we don't often talk about abusers who want to do better. And it is another one of those conversations, like you were talking, Michelle, that is a tricky, sticky, tough place to go. But I am very proud that what I know of in Calgary is that there are more and more resources for people who are looking to change, which I think is fantastic. So should you be one of those people that have asked the question, what do I do when I start feeling physically angry? My first recommendation would be to remove yourself from the situation, from anyone that might be in jeopardy of being receiving the fallout of that, and then go get help. And help is available, which is fantastic. And I applaud you for asking that question. Another question that came in too is
Wait, but maybe before we move past that,
sure,
that is another great situation where you can be calling a helpline. If you're having aggression and anger issues, you're self-aware enough to realize that there is help available for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the idea of, I think that is like a key part of ending domestic abuse eventually in the future, is helping aggressors become aware of resources and ways that they can handle stress and anger and fear without becoming aggressive. There are professional resources available. I would hope to think that they are free if you call a helpline. This is something maybe Maggie, can you chime in on this? Is she able to do that? Maybe not.
I think she is.
Is she popping in?
Yeah.
Maggie, what do you think about that? If there's someone who's looking for help and resources and they feel like they are an aggressor?
Certainly. So, a major part of that is to your point, is just that acknowledgement and that self-awareness, and to want to do it differently and be differently. You're understanding that the boundaries, you're crossing over healthy boundaries. And there are, certainly within Calgary, the Calgary Counseling Center, the YW, we have the Immigrant Services Calgary. They all assist with counseling services. And it really is about taking that step. But, being that change is being courageous enough to take that step, and knowing that in doing so, you're creating healthier families for yourself and then for other generations. So I applaud that courage.
Thanks, Maggie.
Thank you, Maggie.
You bet.
Another question is, how do we help people understand that abuse isn't just physical? Michelle, do you want to handle that one?
I don't know. Olivia, maybe you would have a better answer to this. How do we help people understand? What do you think?
Well, I think it's important to understand emotional abuse as well. The body definitely keeps a score, and physical abuse is similar. Emotional abuse has just the same effect as physical abuse. And it's important to acknowledge that neither is more painful than the other. They both have effects, because emotional abuse affects, it was such as something like gaslighting, for example. Gaslighting can cause things like memory loss. And these are things that are very, very difficult to recover from. And what can be hard for people to understand is just because we do not have the physical, appearance of being abused, it doesn't mean that inside there isn't damage there. And it's important to acknowledge that both are equally as painful for people, and there is a specific way to healing for each of them.
I think part of the problem is when someone is being emotionally abused, their abuser is actively trying to diminish their self-worth and make them feel like it is their fault, right? So it can be hard, I think, to turn around and say, wait a minute, you're doing this, not me, right? But essentially there's emotional abuse, there's even financial abuse, there is the aggressors trying to control your life, who you see, trying to isolate you. I think what we need is actually just a list of all the different kinds of abuse. But at the end of the day, if you're in a relationship where someone is trying to control you, to diminish your sense of self-worth, trying to make you feel like you are less than, that is absolutely a form of abuse and a huge red flag.
Yeah. Definitely.
The further to that last question, the person who asked it is also asking, how do you explain it to your family that you can't just put a smile on your face, that it does affect you long term? How do you get them on side for understanding that?
For understanding when you want to leave someone, or
for understanding that the emotional abuse has taken a toll on you, and that you're triggerable, even though it wasn't a physical incident, that you are triggerable just the same, even though it was emotional.
I mean, this is the thing. Healing doesn't happen in a vacuum. We still have to deal with our family, with our kids, with our jobs while we're dealing with our trauma. So trying to get our families to understand, I mean, there must be resources for families as well.
There are, yeah.
They would have to bring their family, if they were open to that and supportive, I think their family would have to become part of that healing process, if that's a possibility.
I would add further to that, if they are not open to that, kind of getting back to Olivia's point, that you need to understand you are enough and you are complete as you are. And if the people who are supposed to love you and supposed to support you are not, that doesn't diminish your value at all. It's a them thing and it's not a you thing. So just keep being strong.
And the reality is family won't always be supportive.
Mm-hmm.
Family won't always be giving you the right advice. So it's not an easy thing to say to someone, okay, leave your aggressive partner who you thought you loved and they love you, go and figure out it's a very challenging thing. And women who are able to move through that are my hero, like hands down. But it is not an easy thing. And that's why, again, all of these support organizations, Homefront, GEMS, like what you guys do is so necessary, because we're asking women to do something that is not just women, but we're asking people to do something that is extremely challenging. And oftentimes they will do it without any support.
So we're getting to there are a lot of questions, but we only have time for a few more. So this one I thought was great. Who do you listen to when you have survived abuse? Do you listen to only other people who have survived, or is it okay to listen to people who don't have any experience?
Listen to, take it
for advice. Yeah, for advice.
Well, what do you think, Jordan?
I think that just like when you're pregnant or when you're going through any large event, when people hear that, so many people want to add their thoughts, their feelings. And I think even if it's well-intended, sometimes it doesn't help. So I think when you're in that situation, go seek professional help. And there's so many wonderful resources. And if you do find that you're speaking to someone who, although is well intended, is not helping, either end the conversation or ask them to stop if you feel comfortable with that, or distance yourself, because at the time when you're healing, you are the most important, not placating someone else. Take care of yourself first and do it with professionals. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we have one more question that I can take, but we also have winners of the 2 headshots. This has gone ridiculously quickly, and I feel like it could go much longer, but I am so grateful for the time that we have had. So we have 2 winners. Deanne Thompson and Vignette Alexander. So each of them will be receiving a headshot signed and addressed specifically to them. So Michelle and Olivia, thank you for that. So the final question, interestingly, is for me. And it is, how did you create gems with your abuse? So I'm going to take that a little bit backwards. For me, gems didn't happen overnight. And this is something I think is a really good point to possibly end on, is that we're not asking you to go out and create a gems for gems. What we're asking you to do is create a sense of being a change maker within yourself, and then be able to magnify that outwards. So for me, my abuse didn't happen as an adult, it happened as a child. And we didn't have the resources at the time to be able, for me to be seeing anyone or receiving any clinical help. So what was very healing for me was picturing the life and the person that I wanted to be in the future with all my might, and doing everything I possibly could to get there. And that was how I found healing. And through that is how, well, all of us came here today, because that's what started Gems for Gems, was me being so focused on where I wanted to go and who I wanted to be, which was the best version of myself that I could possibly make. So I am nowhere near yet, but the work getting there is very healing for me. So that's the answer to that question. So if the winners could put your information in the Q&A box, that would be great. And I just like to thank our sponsors one more time. Homefront, United Way, Discovery House, Mar Media, the Aesthetics Institute, and A Dose of Happiness. Our team of ambassadors that made this possible: Kathy Smart, Angela Schoenfeld, Dalen Sugarin, Brittany Brander, Tom Guilford, Janessa and Alexander from Genesia, and Paige Ross. A massive thank you to Michelle and Olivia. Your time and vulnerability and willingness to lead by example, just by being here, let alone how you conduct yourselves through your lives, has meant the world to me. I appreciate it very much. If you would like to support Gems for Gems, there will be lots of different links coming your way. We are all wearing Gems for Gems swag, which is our motto, be the change. And that's available at our website. All those links will be available, but I also encourage you to take a look at our partners' websites as well. All of them are on the leading edge of this industry and are really working hard to be able to create change in their own sections of the domestic abuse sector. So please take a look. And I would like to end with thanking every single one of you that came on here. You guys have all stepped up and taken those first steps to creating change from within first. Go out there, magnify it, and remember you're a gem no matter what. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.